County Administration Committee meeting to order, please. Madam Clerk, may we have roll call?
Tweed Schuman,
Here.
Ron Buckholz,
Present.
Tom Duffy,
Here.
Ron Kinsley, Dale Schleter.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Is it on the screen? There we go. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone. Certification of compliance with open meetings law, Madam Clerk.
This meeting has been noticed to the public and news media as required by section 19.84 of the Wisconsin statutes.
Thank you again. The meeting agenda has been presented. Moving on then to number 6, public comment. I have one public comment sheet in front of me. Miss Linda Zelmer, please step to the mic, state your name and address, and you'll have 3 minutes, ma'am.
Linda Zilmer, 902 Holly Hill Lane, Birchwood, Edgewater property owner. 3 items for admin committee public comment today. One is that I made public comment at Economic Development and Extension to request more public training on local government matters. It's really disturbing to read the Sawyer County Record that the articles demonstrate how little people understand their local government functions, county government, open meetings and things like that. And so I think a benefit to both officials and the public would to be call in extension to do some training. And it's also probably long overdue to have a regional training around zoning. That leads to my second comment. In the finance committee meeting, there was some discussion and other matters about public records requests and legal fees. I would maybe as a helping out with the 2024 budget, it would be helpful to pull together an analysis of all the legal fees for the maybe from 2020 through the present, with a breakdown of the departments and where the money is, what cases things are being spent on. I have viewed legal invoices and I know they are broken out by that, so it shouldn't take a lot of work. Some of the public records requests that have been significant have had to do with legal fees, and tying into the education in the legal fees. I really do think, especially in the zoning area, if both staff and the zoning committee members had significantly more training in that area, the county could avoid not only bad public perception, but also legal fees. Things like the zoning ordinance amendment that is dragged on forever and ever, that has to be a huge cost, and education and having informed decision makers would help. And then lastly, especially under the administrator form of government, with so much being juggled and carried on by the admin department, it would be helpful to have the administrator's report attached to this packet to be able to look back on it, and if not possible for this committee, for sure at the county board packet level. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Anyone else for public comment? Mike, is anybody online? Where do I look for that? Indian. Okay, there'd be a hand up or something. Okay. All right, thank you. Moving on then to number 7, approval of our meeting minutes, May 11th, 2023. Does anyone see any edits, corrections, deletions? Mr. Kinsley? Okay, Mr. Schleter, second. Motion by Mr. Kinsley, second by Mr. Schleter to approve our meeting minutes of May 11, 2023 as presented. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, thank you. Good job, Lynn. All right, moving on to number 8 then, Veterans Service Department report. We have our young lady here. Please introduce yourself again, please.
Yep, I'm Nicole Clapero. I work at the Sawyer County Veterans Service Office under Gary Elliott. Just a quick recap of May business. We had 511 phone calls, 381 letters, emails, and faxes, and 219 office visits. Year to date, the Veterans Service Office submitted 82 disability pension claims to date and received retroactive payment of $217.88 for claims decided in the veteran's favor. Our training is up to date. I just successfully completed my training with the Wisconsin Department of Veteran Affairs, and I'm accredited. Gary is at national training this week, and then we'll both be up to date. We spent Memorial Day this year. We went to some of the outskirts of the county and we visited Coudray, Radisson, Loretta, Draper, and Winter. And then doing that, I was able to make some connections with the Winter American Legion and the Draper American Legion. So it was a really good opportunity for me just to do some meet and greet and just get out there with my veterans. So right now we're just kind of working, I think, on getting me settled in and a little bit more helpful so that I can be better helpful to Gary and the veterans.
Wonderful. Thank you. Any questions, comments for Veteran Service Report? No, appreciate it.
Well, thank you guys, and Lynn,
Yeah,
And-
nice report. Thank you.
have a good day, guys. Thank you.
Okay. Moving on then to number 9, Information Technology Department report. Mike? Morning, sir.
I turn on the button there. Morning. So I didn't submit a written report. Basically, we've just been doing help desk items. We've been also tweaking the AV in this room. I think we've got it now set at least until it's finally done later this year. So unless there's any questions, that's my report.
So this room is pretty much complete then, Mike?
Well, it's right now, everything is kind of a tabletop setup. I
Oh,
mean, we are using some of the components like the TVs, that's the final case, the final configuration, the cameras. We're able to use 2 cameras for meetings here. Right now, we're just using the one that swivels on the mount there for this meeting. It can zoom in and out, and that one also can show the audience. The sound will be a little bit better. We're still going to be using these delegate mics once the final configuration is done. They're basically the same ones from the courtroom, so they're still in really good shape. But once things are done, we'll be getting sound and it'll be rebroadcast through the speakers in the ceiling rather than that little micro or that speaker on the floor. So it's close to final, but there'll be some finishing touches done. We'll also later this year be finishing up AV in the Kansas boardroom, depending on funding, in the sheriff's conference room. So those are upcoming installs we'll be doing.
super. Any questions, concerns for Mike on his information technology report?
Mike is also involved in the second program of the information. Does a very nice job.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Appreciate that. Okay, moving on then to number 10, Human Resources Report. We've got a written report. Andy, are you gonna, I don't see Rose here. Is there anything you want to comment here?
Rose is unavailable. I think, yeah, we've had some. I think things are improving on the hiring front, even though we've had some departments a little more difficult than others. We do have some openings within the highway department. We had a couple good rounds of applicants and made some hires, but now we have 2 more openings and applications are coming a little slower for that. In the CPS area, we essentially had a full rebuild there. Supervisor, staff, all turned over. At this point, excuse me, we have all of the caseworker positions either filled or hired.
Yep.
With people coming in. It'll be a little while before they get up and running, just because of the time to onboard and then the training they have to go through the state. The supervisor position, we still have a contract person helping us there. We do have an applicant for that position that will be doing an interview in the very near future. So that's moving along. Same thing here. We have a victim witness coordinator person starting in a couple of weeks. Still filling out a couple positions in dispatch in the jail and a court services deputy. And then public health assistant. As part of the shuffle in HHS with Julia moving to the director position, it bumped everybody up in the public health area. So we have 1 position open there. And that is kind of the summary. I think we're making progress.
Okay, I'm just reviewing that list, Andy. Thank you. As far as health and human services, are we getting, was it in CPS that we were so short of workers?
Those are the ones we have either
Okay,
people have started, or we have a couple that are hired but are starting in down the road here.
okay,
But and then we have an applicant for the supervisor position that we'll be interviewing.
great.
That
But
looks
we're
promising.
meeting our mandated service requirement there.
We are, because I mean, in addition to the people we've hired, we're still the state through Department of Health and Human Services at the state. There's a specific training program that the CPS people have to go through. It's called We Learn. They're limited on how many cases they can take on until they're fully trained. We have some of the employees going through the first session, the intake training this month, and then some will go in July. So it's going to be a bit of a ramp up for them to be fully functional. So while that's happening, we're still using all of the kind of temporary LTE people from other counties that have been helping us are still on board as well. So we're gonna have some double up. That'll affect our budget a little bit, but that's just the way that program works as far as having to go through all the training that the state requires.
Sure. And on this turnover list, there's like 4 highway positions and 4 sheriff's department positions. Are those hires or are those people that have left or come or both?
The at the top under the turnover,
Yeah.
so if it says full-time, part-time, those are hires.
Oh, okay.
But otherwise it'll say retired or term
Got it.
if they're departures. So the sheriff's department, excuse me, the highway department, we had a retirement. And then I think all of our positions have been retirements. that
Oh,
we've
so
been
all those
filling.
sheriff departments were hires.
Yes,
Okay. Same with the highway, other,
highway, we had
oh, you had 3
Summer help.
lost. Yeah.
summer people coming back in. And yeah, the sheriff's department, so we had 1 deputy depart for another county. Otherwise, the rest of these are hires.
Okay, thank you. Andy, any questions, concerns? Okay,
How do we stand on women jailers?
Pardon?
the women jailers.
We've got 1 coming back, still has not returned from maternity, but I think that's in another 30 days, they'll be back. And then we've hired some, so we're getting closer, but we can't really bring the female prisoners back. We have to get the hires trained first.
So it looks promising. eh?
Yes, yep.
Yeah. Good.
Good, thank you. Okay, moving on then, number 11, employee policy updates, discussion, possible action. I know this was moved to administration, but it was presented where in finance, Mr. Markin?
It was, yep.
Okay, you have the floor, sir.
All right. So really what is precipitating this is a lot of staff would prefer taking their own vehicle to the meeting. They're more comfortable with it. That a lot of their police that. But what I've done is, so the policy reporting, anything that was changed, red is stricken, green is added. And some of it is just cleanup from last, I believe, August, when the board approved different reimbursement levels for some stuff. But the language on mileage reimbursement is new, and I actually did some analytics on this then after the people were asking me about it. I just wanted to see how often our vehicles were being used. So this sheet that I just gave you kind of lists out our fleet. And when I say fleet, I'm talking just the ones that people can rent out to use. And in 2019, among the 9 vehicles, really 8, that van doesn't get used much, it's older. We drove 117,000 miles. So that was like our last normal year prior to COVID. So then I've looked at the tracking for 21 and 22. 21, we went down to 48,000. 22, we went back up to 62, which is still roughly half of what it was prior to COVID. I think one of the things we've seen is we're doing business differently now. A lot of things are done through Zoom versus actually going to people's homes. So that has been a change. So with that information, what I did is I kind of analyzed our cost per mile on our fleet. So those numbers you see there under cost, the depreciation, what I've done there is I've taken a $30,000 purchase of each of the 8 vehicles, divided it out on a 6-year replacement. So that comes out to 40,000 a year replacing vehicles. And then the fuel is the MPGs at how many miles we're driving. Maintenance repairs is a little bit of a guess, probably a conservatively low one on that size of fleet. Insurance is what the insurance costs us per year. And then the residual is when we turn around and sell the cars when we go to replace them. So when I netted that out, you can see the costs. And a lot of it doesn't change because they're fixed costs regardless if we're using them or not. And in 2019, at those many miles, we were running at 39 cents a mile, which makes sense. It was below the IRS rate, so it made sense to have the fleet and use them the way we were. Well, then when you go fast forward to 21 and even 22, 21, we're at 79 cents a mile, which that obviously doesn't pay to have a fleet at all. And I'm not advocating getting rid of the fleet. We don't want to force anyone to use a county vehicle, but what we would be looking at is the option. And again, it'd be primarily on a trip to go to one of your either regional meeting or a state conference. And for instance, if somebody lives up by Sealy and they have a regional meeting in Ashland, a regional county meeting, it doesn't make a lot of sense to drive here and then take the county vehicle all the way up there, all the way back, and then go back home. So it, for the convenience of the person and actually also money saving, it would make more sense to just let them drive from home and go up there and come back. So those are kind of that's the rationale behind it. I don't know the back history of why the fleet is the size it is or anything, or if past boards had really requested people use the vehicles. The thing I ran into coming here is the departments were doing it differently. So one thing we'd like to do is unify, make all that uniform, have a uniform form for reimbursement, uniform policy application, and all of that. So whatever we come up with, I will make sure everybody is doing that now, because right now it's not uniform. And what I hear is, well, it's always been that way, which is what you always hear when you know. But I will want to hold to the policy that board has. So whether we change it or leave it the same, then I'll adjust accordingly. So that's kind of the backstory and a little data behind it. Any questions?
So what are you proposing here then that we,
Well, Andy, can you? So this is the existing policy up before you. And on page 2, there are a couple changes. Under 5, I would propose striking transportation should be used county fleet, just saying employees are encouraged to use a county fleet vehicle. The next, under A and B, that was already changed last fall, so that's just cleaning up the language to match what the board put in place in the fall. And then C, we still want to encourage people to use the fleet when possible, and so employees should instead of will. And then it would strike out that language that they have to get a signed statement saying there was no vehicle available. And like I started with, most of this is due to people going out of county to training. And if you wanted to limit it for that, that would be okay too. The other problem with, like if you go to I've gone to a conference in Elkhart Lake. Well, to take a county vehicle there takes it out of the fleet for 2 days, and really I'm just getting there and going back, coming back. So I'm not using it for anything other than the trip there and back, but then nobody else can use it for those 2 days.
Any questions on those edits, people? Mr. Buckles?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman and Mike, I mean, as long as we have that fleet here, I believe we should utilize them. I mean, if they're just gonna sit out there and they want to use their own vehicles, then why have them?
Well, I would reduce the fleet. That would be the ultimate
Right.
goal. If our costs are so much more per mile than even the IRS reimbursement rate, it doesn't make sense to have it that high. So that would go along with it.
You know, because I brought this up once before at one of our meetings, why we have all these vehicles. And at that time, we were told they all get used by somebody.
The new services used to use them all the time,
Right.
and that's what the fleet team.
Okay.
And different departments have their own fleet, and this is not included in that at all, these numbers. And if I look at 2019, yeah, we were using them. But we're not using them to the same extent anymore. And like I said, I think that's due to, we're doing a lot of video chatting now versus actually traveling. Thanks.
Maybe the other
You
thing
still
with
have
doing-
the,
oh, sorry.
you still have the language in your mic. Employees are encouraged to use the fleet,
Yes.
correct?
Yep.
Yeah. Employees should request a fleet car, yep. Go ahead, Andy, sorry.
I was just gonna mention with human services, one of the things with that specific area is oftentimes they're hauling clients or public for medical assistance or home visits. So in those cases, they would be required to use a county vehicle. We're not gonna allow them to haul the public in their personal vehicles for work. So that's why it's still important to maintain the fleet.
And prior to the COVID, they used to use it for training all the time. They were always going to training. We had quite a few people going, and it was a good thing at that time. But like everything, things changed.
A lot of trainings online now too.
Yeah, that's gonna be changed.
Okay, next, Mike. You want to keep going with your edits, or is that the main thing?
I think that's it. The final one was just changing that maximum aggregate meal amount, which was, again, was done last fall. So it would just change the policy to reflect the board's wishes.
Pleasure of the board.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Kinsley, second by Mr. Buckholz to approve. What are we amending the employee policy? Would you say, Andy? With the edits presented by Mr. Marker here today. Should this go to county board then, guys? Or are we good here? And then move it on to full county board next week. Is there any further discussion? You want a clicker, Leonard? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right.
Comment, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
I'm really impressed with Mike puts together all these numbers for us because that hasn't been done before and it really helps a lot. Thank you for that.
I like data driven
That's for
decision
the
making.
options.
Yeah, it does help us a lot. Thanks, Mike.
Yeah, we appreciate all those efforts, Mike, and it's saving the county, the taxpayers money. Thank you. All right, then, moving on, number 12, County Clerk Department Report. Madam Clerk.
Sure, you've got the year-to-date totals of the county clerk activity at the desk. You're going to see a big drop off in work permits starting the end of this month since the state has taken that service away from us, from all county clerks, and it will now only be available to parents and guardians online. We are seeing, though, that those parents who are using it right now they are finding some glitches in the system, which we can't help them with because we can't see their software or their logins. So we're working out the bugs on that, but that's going to reduce all or any work permit income from that function. And the Wisconsin Elections Commission has been busy changing the envelopes for absentee voting. So you're going to be seeing new inner and outer envelopes eventually, trying to determine whether or not they can use up old stock or if we have to replace everything as of the 1st of January. And that's about it.
All right. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Kinsley.
So if the state's taking over that program, but they're still gonna forward the money to the county, that they receive?
Nope, we do not get any income from that anymore. In fact, I emailed them saying that we continue to do some of the work and not get compensated for it because these parents come back to us with their problems. We're printing out their documents because they don't get a copy. And they say, well, we'll work on that.
Thanks,
All right.
Dave.
Anything else for Madam Clerk? Mr. Duffy, are you
No.
good? Okay. Thank you.
You have a question?
Oh, Mr. Schleter, did you have a comment, sir?
Was pretty well covered. I was going to say the state tells the parents to use this program, but when glitches come up, we got to fix them. Is
Right.
that a rule? Does the state say?
They don't, they've since sent us a phone number and what we're gonna just do is give them the state's phone
Yeah,
number and then
give
let the
them the-
state take it over again.
Good. Good.
Well, Jimmy.
Okay, thank you, Madam Clerk. Very well done. Number 13, resolution in support of the Lacoudere versus Evers decision. Discussion, possible action. We have a resolution in front of us here, and Andy, you want to take that? Very well done. I think.
Sure.
Yep.
I'm not gonna take any credit for it, but it's kind of the season where counties are passing resolutions that get forwarded to the Wisconsin County Association Conference, the business meeting in the fall. And then the board chairs vote on them and becomes part of the County Association legislative platform. This was a resolution developed with the counties affected by the LCO versus Evers decision. Primarily Ashland and Bayfield are the most affected, but also Vilas County and I think a little bit of Iron, and then obviously us in Sawyer County were affected by it. So this is basically asking for the state to assist. This really isn't an issue for the local bodies. The court decision was between the state and the LCO. But what it resulted in is the properties being removed from the tax roll that were within the reservation boundary, that were being taxed, even though they were being owned by tribal members. Obviously, I think we've covered that has a financial impact on the budgets of the towns and the county, as well as the school district. And it's asking the state to make those counties whole for the loss of that tax income. In here, it references specifically a couple of towns in Bayfield and Ashland County, because those were the most significant impacts of the towns in those counties. It's a smaller amount here, town of Hayward, town of Bass Lake. It's probably in the neighborhood of a loss of $50,000 in tax revenue for the local bodies. Just probably 5% or less. But we used Bayfield and Ashland County towns because those were the most significant reductions in valuation. The total amount is over $900,000 annually and 1 over the next 2 years. And that number could change as properties maybe go back into tribal ownership within those reservations. So it's not a one-time cost. It could actually increase. It probably would have been more significant here, but what we believe was happening is that the assessors in those towns here were already removing these properties from the tax roll. I don't know if they were supposed to be doing that, but they had already done that. So the impact wasn't as significant when the court decision came down. But this is one of those resolutions that's asking for something from the state, kind of in solidarity with our other counties affected. And that's why I'm bringing it to you for consideration to take to the board for adoption.
Wonderful, well said. Okay. Pleasure of the board in support of the state assisting these counties through this resolution.
So who does this resolution send to?
It'll go to the legislators and then the counties association, and then ask that the counties association consider it to make it part of the WCA legislative platform.
So what are the possibilities that they'll approve this?
Um,
Promising or?
well, this possibility of state revenue being directed to the counties and towns to recover the tax was a part of the governor's budget proposal.
Correct.
I have not seen or heard of it yet in the legislators, the Assembly and the Senate's budget proposal, but it's still, I think it's gotten to the bottom of the list. It's still a possibility, But this is just trying to get this to the WCA. I think WCA, it's a good chance that the body there will adopt it as part of their legislative platform since it's coming from multiple counties, the request. So Ashland and Bayfield, for sure, I'm not sure about Vilas, but Ashland and Bayfield are in the process. Either they've adopted this or they're moving this to adoption at their county boards, the same resolution.
Yep, so this will go to Wisconsin counties and you bet. Mr. Buckholz.
Nothing for you.
Okay, Mr. Duffy.
I move we approve the resolution. as
I'll
presented.
second that.
Okay, thank you. Motion by Mr. Duffy, second by Mr. Buckholz, approving this resolution in support. Is there any further discussion? Mr. Kinsley.
Andy, do you know, like the towns, if they have been collecting taxes, how many years they gotta go back?
How many years they're gonna go back? Well,
to the refund?
just last year and this year. That's what my understanding. Now, again, it appears to be a little different here than what I'm getting from the other counties. In some of the other counties, the property owners had stopped paying their taxes. And so they're trying to recover that through the state, their request. But here it appears that a majority of the property owners that are impacted had been keeping their taxes current. Because the issue in those other counties is now that the court decision has been made, the county cannot go back and collect those back taxes, even though they've paid those taxes out. They've settled with the school district and the town and the municipality. But we don't appear to have that problem here.
Okay, so I have a motion by Mr. Duffy, second by Mr. Buckholz, approving in support of this resolution and moving it on to the full county board next week. Is there any further discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Great, thank you. All right, moving on then to county administrators report. Andy?
Just run through kind of the normal items we've been talking about. Nothing really new on the courthouse remodeling and construction. There's been no significant surprises, but necessitated any contingency outside the normal. The east parking lot, the concrete work is done. Blacktop is supposed to come in next week. We could have that parking lot turned over to us by the end of next week by Friday. Depending on the weather, how hot it is, we've discussed when we'll actually put it into use. If it's hot out, we're going to let it sit for a while so it hardens up, and then we'll start using it. Discussion at Public Works last night. We're moving ahead with some smaller items that are needs, like the flags and the podiums and some ramp railings. The other items we had discussed last month, like changes to fire doors or some of the higher ticket items, we're gonna the AV for the conference rooms, we're just gonna push off until the end of the project. No, there's no savings to try to consider those now. We'll see where we sit with the budget when the project's done and decide if those items are needed or are priorities or not. Personnel wise, no progress on no settlement on negotiations. There's been some exchange of information. We are working through a mediator now, but at this point we have not settled, which is frustrating. But we've outlined our position, and that's been communicated back through the mediator to the union. We've gone through with the HR report all the positions that are currently recruiting for. One discussion on some of these positions specific to the sheriff and the ambulance service that we're working with both of them on is we don't foresee like the paramedic situation improving. There's just not enough paramedics in the state or in the region. So if anything, they shuffle around, or you're getting somebody that works for multiple services. So we are, I guess, moving down the road of trying to train some of our AEMTs to become paramedics and potentially sponsoring them through the paramedic program in exchange for an employment contract. So that's kind of, grow from within, so that we have people that are already based here that we can get to become paramedics and then anticipate they would stay with us. Because that's really where we're short within that service, that limits our capacity of what we can do. Likewise with the sheriff, the state's had a training program, or state has the academy program where if you sponsor a person to the law enforcement academy, the state will reimburse the cost. There's a couple of things that we have to employ them. We have to have a position, and they have to be in a sworn position for us to do that. So we are, the sheriff's department is sponsoring a couple individuals. One in the academy now and one in the academy that's starting. So we hope to improve our ability to attract and retain people by taking more of a proactive position and getting them trained and through those types of programs. So that's something different. A lot of other counties have been doing the academy sponsorship for a while. So we just think it's the next step for us. Also, I wanted to bring this up now because I know this was a discussion point, perhaps when the new courthouse was agreed to go ahead with construction. We did receive our first new position request for 2024. As part of the budget, we request departments to let us know that they want, what new positions they would like, and we analyze those and share those with the board as part of the budget process. So there's been an official request for an additional judicial assistant to support the second judge in the second courtroom. They would like that position to start in August when the new judge starts. So I guess this is me letting you know that. I know if you want to share here afterwards your thoughts on that, let me know. And I'm bringing this up, and I kind of pushed the issue. If they're going to do this, do it now, because we have a vacancy coming up in our register and probate juvenile court clerk position. The individual that we employ there is switching to a different position within the county. So I know that was one of the discussion points a couple of years ago was, potentially the JAs could be registered in probates. That's the case in some other counties, but that's not what is being requested now. But so this is relatively new. I've been talking to the judge. I have to talk to some other people like the clerk of court to see what we can do. The district court administrator was here last week and we went through this as to staffing levels relative to the court in other counties and how the caseload looks for judges and what the judicial assistant is expected to do, and trying to avoid adding another position. But I guess I wanted to let you know that position request has come in, and we're working through that, and we'll bring a recommendation back to the appropriate committees next month. I just didn't have the opportunity to get it done before this meeting.
Mr. Slater?
What does the judicial system do?
Judicial assistant is like the right hand of the judge. So scheduling, some research, putting orders through, kind of all the logistics that the judge has to choreograph, the judicial assistant handles. I guess that's a pretty informal description. I give you a more formal
So
one.
does that take 40 hours a week?
Yeah. I mean, I'll just tell you that the district court, when we went through the other courts in the region, at least, it's generally a 1-to-1 based on the data, like each judge has a judicial assistant.
Unless you get a good judge and they do their own.
Yeah, we didn't find that. I was hoping to see that, but that wasn't the numbers I have been able to track down so far. So I mean, like here I can just share like the judicial assistant, when the judge can't make it to a meeting, the judicial assistant comes and acts as the proxy for the judge. There will be the district court, and I don't know if you heard this when you went down the road of adding a second courtroom, but already the Judge Yackel is being assigned cases outside the county now, because they're anticipating the second judge coming on board, which will reduce. You're at 1.85. According to the state of the court system, the current load in the county would equate to 1.85 judges. So one judge has been doing that. Now you're going to have two judges that'll split the 1.85, which means they don't have a full caseload. So now they'll have cases outside the county that they'll have to start being assigned to. And so the judicial assistant here will be responsible to coordinate with those attorneys for those cases and getting the courtrooms in those other counties, and just the kind of the general logistics with that as well. Yes, sir.
When we had out of county judges coming here, that was costing us more money. right?
I don't know if I could speak to that.
Well, it wasn't free.
I don't know.
I don't know the answer to that. We'll have to ask Mr. Markert, I guess, that.
Okay,
Costs us
yeah, I
money to
would,
bring in judges.
Well, I mean, the judge itself would not cost the county money because the judges are paid for by the
By the
state.
state, right?
but this was an extra judge that was called in from another district to help deal with the overloaded docket here.
Okay,
There was some additional cost to the county. I'm almost 95% sure of that.
Art probably could answer that also. I think you're right. But if we're bringing in the second judicial person, I believe Sawyer County should put together a resolution and ask the state to pay for that sum.
Pay for what?
If we're bringing in another employee, when Channing told us it would not cost us nothing else, I believe Sawyer County should put together a resolution and tell the state they're paying for that person.
I'll go along with that 100%. And if our judge is going to a different county, that county's taking care of the expenses and costs of that.
That's what I don't know if it's, I don't know.
In fact, if they're paying him here, then we shouldn't pay him here when he's not here.
But that's a state employee, the judge is a state employee. So I don't know if how that works.
yeah, the judge and the court reporter are state employees. So I don't think, that's why I don't think there shouldn't be any additional cost when the judge goes outside the county. The judicial assistant is a county employee, but we do receive, I don't know the number, but we receive a state stipend for part of their cost, but the majority of it is on the county for the judicial assistants.
One of my questions is though, when this new courtroom and the second judge is coming about, that our previous judge right now, or the judge that we have now, needed help because he couldn't handle the caseload. Now that we got the second judge, now they're gonna ship him out to a different county. That don't make sense.
And then the second judge hasn't even started yet.
He hasn't started
And
yet.
I don't think he's going, they're starting to assign cases. So the court dates will be after the second judge starts. And there's a, for any court case right now, it's months before you actually have your court date. So.
Yeah, and we could do this, guys, on a future agenda item and invite Mr. Channing back.
Well, Mr. Channing's gone, but Ross is here. I think it's time for Ross to come to the county board and explain stuff to us.
And I would allow that. Andy, we'll try to set that
I'll
up.
set that
Okay.
up, yeah.
Yep.
But yeah, this is primarily, I had heard this was coming, so I asked for something in writing and I got that from the judge just within the last day, because I don't want to fill the registered probate position if it's an opportunity. And I don't know if we can work something out. So I want to force the conversation now.
Sure. Okay, anything else? Mr.
Um,
Alvarado?
Yeah, but nothing new on CJCC. We haven't met since my report last month. Child support MOU, we're done with that. That's been agreed to. The committee approved that. Public safety. We covered the tribal land taxation issue. I guess just along those same lines, we at Public Works last night, we had received the resolution from the LCO regarding road bans back in April. We didn't get it before the committee meeting to put it on the agenda to discuss. We really hadn't taken it up, but essentially the LCO passed a resolution in April saying that they have, jurisdiction of roads within the reservation. And even though the county had put road bans in place during the spring thaw, that the tribe believe they have jurisdiction and we're still going to run their equipment for the Conservation Development Department, and if propane trucks needed to run on the county roads, that was all right. We didn't take it up, but we think it's something that we need to open up a dialogue with the tribe on, just because of the ATV discussion was about jurisdiction and the road bans. So we just discussed last night, are going to make send some communication to Chairman Taylor, asking for a sit down to kind of just discuss these items. And I think I said this last night, I want to make sure this is not like we're staking out an adversarial position. We think there are some questions unanswered. We know the tribe has asked for guidance from the Bureau of Indian Affairs, from BIA, and has really not gotten anything either. So we want to keep dialogue open with them and try to address these things. Rather than resolutions come and we don't know what we're going to do about it. Yeah, and then we have an ethics meeting after this, which there might be some outcomes of that. There's been a couple of ethics complaints. Both of those have been addressed via Corp Council. We're going to share those with the Ethics Committee. Ethics Committee has not met in, I don't know how long, not since I've been here.
Yeah.
We'll make sure they're up to speed on the ethics code, understand what the complaints are. If they have any questions, we can answer them, and then discuss a little bit on how to improve our, I would say compliance, but maybe our disclosure for the ethics code and avoid future situations.
Anything new on the opioid settlement or?
Nothing new on opioid. We're kind of stepped back a little bit from that just because of the turnover in HHS with shuffling of some people who are involved in that. So the opioid money is still sitting in the account. We're getting this year's allocation, next year's payment. We've been notified it's coming, so it should be here within 30 days. That's another $21,000, I believe. We haven't received any, that's from the settlements we had already signed off on a couple of years ago. We haven't received anything on when the money from the most recent, the retailer settlements is going to start coming.
Nothing new on broadband either, Andy.
Nothing really new. There's some stuff coming out from the state on broadband. You'll see more surveys and information gathering. There's been 2 new grants awarded through the last round, one to Bevcom for Radisson, Coudray area, and one to Norvado for the winter area. So we're still trying to figure out how to get a map, get the information to put the map together. But we're starting to fill, slowly the gaps are starting to fill in.
Carbon credits?
Forestry updated the committee that they're fulfilling some more information requirements or requests to Anu. We checked on Bayfield County just to see where they're at, and they have not, their credits have not been sold yet. And they're the county that's the furthest along with this, and we had expected they would have seen a sale by now, but that hasn't happened yet. Not specific to carbon credits, but I think it's good from a budget standpoint that forestry's doing a great job. I didn't know it's partly the market, but last year we had to catch up at the end of the year. This year we're way ahead of schedule. So I think out of the $1.8 million budget that they anticipated, they're already at 1.4. So it's a good sign.
Mr. Kinsley?
We go back to EMS. So if we're training EMTs to be paramedics, are we doing any kind of contract?
Yes. Yep. We'll sponsor them to the paramedic program. We do have a contract that we've brought in from elsewhere, having Corp Council look at, but it'll be like a minimum 2-year employment contract.
Thank you.
I want to caution though that,
But at least you gotta try.
yes, no, we're going to put it in writing.
Okay, anything else? Committee? No, if not, thank you, Andy.
Thank you, Andy.
Does that conclude your report, sir?
It does.
All right. Okay, moving on to the number 15 on the agenda, closed session. It's up to you, sir.
Thank you, Vince.
All right. Is that a motion, Mr. Kinsley? Okay, I got a motion by Mr. Kinsley to go into closed session, consider to convene pursuant to Wisconsin statute SS 19.851, parents E, deliberating or negotiating the purchasing of public properties, the investing of public funds, or conducting other specified public business whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session. To discuss the contractual agreements for the courthouse construction project, to discuss contractor performance on the courthouse project, and the county's legal and contractual position in relation to same. Motion by Mr. Kinsley, second by Mr. Buckholz. May we have a roll call vote, Madam Clerk? Yes.
Mr. Buckholz.
Yes.
Mr. Duffy.
Yes.
Mr. Kinsley.
Yes.
Mr. Schleter.
Yep.
Yeah, 5-0.
Okay. Motion carried. Okay, we are back in open session. Future agenda items, I've got, I think on next month's administration, we will add some discussion on additional staff and funds for the second courtroom. So we can address that. Okay,
And the invitation.
Anything
for
else?
the
How about our
district.
mediation with employees? How's that?
yep. Andy gave that on his
Okay.
report, but he can give that again at county board, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. If not, then we are adjourned. Thank you very much, everybody. 11:03, then.